Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to gosh, I've no idea what this is going to be like because we have a wild woman on our hands who is completely extraordinary and delightfully unpredictable. And I want to introduce you all with so much gratitude to Luisah Teish, who is a writer and storyteller, an artist activist, a spiritual guidance counselor. She is an initiated elder in the Ifa Orisha tradition of the West African diaspora. Luisah holds a chieftaincy title, Yeye Woro, from the Fatumashe. Have I said that right?
Fatumashe.
Close enough. Fatumashe compound in Ile-Ife. How's that?
Ile-Ife,
Really good, in Nigeria.
Yeah.
She's the author of Jambalaya, the Natural Woman's Book of Personal Chants and Practical Rituals. And she's co-authored On Holy Ground, Commitment and Devotion to Sacred Land. Her most recent work is Spirit Revealing Color Healing, a book of Zen doodles. She has several works in progress. She's contributed to 35 anthologies. She's a member of so many different things. She is just beautiful and extraordinary. And if I was to say who this woman is, having met her once, where she was completely outrageous. We were on stage together at the Flourishing Diversity event in London last year. And I would say you are a combination of deep, deep, rich earth, really bright lightning. You're like a succulent rainforest. There's a volcano in there somewhere.
Sure. Yes, it is.
And there's a.
You're right.
Yeah. And there's a fair few four-leggeds and winged beings as well. You carry really strong elemental energy. You're like you carry a mountain and a cobweb. Do you know what I mean? You have that.
Wow.
You have this subtlety of spirit, and you have the might of a mountain. And I just think you're extraordinary. And I'm so privileged that you're here and that we get to hang out with you for an hour. I mean, what a joy.
Thank you so much, Claire. You know, it's very interesting because as you describe things, you really are going into what we call in my tradition a person's ita. That is what places in nature you are a child of. And the volcano is very important to me.
Yeah.
My totem bird is the African vulture. Yeah, you know. My goddess is the flowing rivers, the sweet waters on the planet. And, she flows down all the mountains and through all the rainforests and everything. And so I'm happy to say that the equivalent of your description tells me that I've been doing my homework and it shows. That's what that means is, yeah, okay, baby, you are carrying your ancestors the way you're supposed to.
Well, and you've got out of your own way is my way of saying it. You've got out of your own way. The quality of your soul sings, howls, dances, and rumbles.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. That's what we need. We need everybody,
especially now.
Yeah, out of their own way, uncompromisingly, authentically themselves.
Yeah.
And that's why, you're such permission. You're such permission. You're just yourself. And so thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your journey. I know it won't have been an easy one. I know it would have been a multicolored one. Like you're carved out enough on the inside, inhabiting yourself enough to say you've gone through some major challenges.
Yes.
And you've kept your humor.
Yeah.
And you've kept your nobility.
Well, if I didn't have a sense of humor, I'd be a raving lunatic.
Yeah.
You gotta, you have to sort of, like you say, get your ego out of the way, right? Tune into the sacred energy that's trying to flow through you. And that's the best way to survive, do your work, thrive, be of service, reflect the divine energy that is, reflect your allotment of it, of the, of all the universal, all the energy in the universe. A certain allotment is coming to each one of us, and how we use that, we call that a person's personal ashe. Ashe is defined as the ability to affect change, the ability to take universal energy and use it in specific ways for the good of yourself, the human community, and the planet, And so basically what you just told me is, you did your homework, girl, and it shows. Because it's been a winding path, It's been a winding path with a couple of stones on the road. But early on, I learned that if I picked those stones up and gathered them, eventually I could stack them and build a little hut with them.
That's one way of putting it. My way is to pick up those stones and like be so unbelievably present to them that they shatter and turn to dust. And
wow.
then I breathe them in and let them become part of me. Like my way has been every obstacle in my way, merge with it, include it.
Okay.
Like we all have our different medicines.
Yeah.
And mine has been very alchemical. Like it's been a very alchemical way of integrating the agonies so that like, it's like eating nightmares really, because I think the world has taught us to be separate and it's taught us to be fractured. And in all those fractures are all these nightmares that are unloved, unwanted, unprocessed, unintegrated. And the more we avoid them, the more dissociated we become and the weaker we become. And so my way has always been, when there's a fracture, to sit in the middle of it until it closes. And then it closes by holding awareness of the dynamic between the two, like opposites, or love and hate, or whatever it is, and waiting until they fuse inside me. And that's how I've recovered from mental illness, frankly. I mean, I was a disaster area as a youngster. I mean, people might say I still am, but I'm a gutsy one now. And the gutsiness has come from accepting and integrating, as opposed to avoiding. And yours the same thing. You're picking them up, you're claiming them, you're making them part of some aspect of your life. It's like, if you trust life, whatever tradition you come from,
right,
trust that life doesn't do anything for no reason, that everything is somehow deeply appropriate to your emergence and your evolution. Then no matter what the nightmare, if you turn towards it, you can just go, wow, there is gold in here somewhere.
Now, Clare, do you write poetry?
I do.
Yeah, because you sound like a poet. You definitely, when you were talking just now, I was sort of seeing certain phrases you use were just titles to whole poems. I have to tell you that how many years I used to write poetry. I don't know if I am brave enough right now to write poetry again, because it goes so deep into my emotional body, that I have periods where I write it. And there was one period in my life a long time ago where a poem would come and I'd say, leave me alone, I'm too busy to write you. You know what I'm saying? And that coupled with a raging anger that I had at one time, I actually visualized my poetry walking toward me, and I grabbed a knife and stabbed it in the heart and said, "Leave me alone. I don't want nothing to do with you." I mean, I killed I killed my poetry. I killed my writing of poetry and concentrated on creative nonfiction, essays, expository. You know, I stopped writing poetry. I stopped writing dramas and that kind of thing. And
do you know what we're about to do now?
hmm.
We're about to say, okay, everybody, let's join in a circle. Everybody that's here, we're going to join in a circle. It's going to be multiple layers like the rings of a tree. And right in the middle, there's going to be this thing that is the soon not to be corpse of Luisah's poetry.
Right.
Let's just see this thing. Let's just see this thing that got hurt. It wasn't wanted. It was not like in that moment. What I'm hearing is in that moment, it was access to too much raw depth and pain for you. And so you didn't have the capacity to allow it to move through you. So I'm going to suggest, in my total arrogance, that the reason you brought that up within a circle of women is because part of you is saying it's time for my poetry to come back.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
And I'm going to own up to the fact that I savaged it. And how many of us here have not in some way savaged some beautiful part of ourselves that felt too difficult to bring to the world? And it's time, because now we're in this beautiful poetic lockdown, which creates space. I mean, when poems come for me, I hear the first line, then I have to run and get a piece of paper, and then it comes out in the paper. And they're always teachings for me. Like, they're not my poems. I don't write poetry. Poetry writes itself through me.
Right to you, yeah.
And I think I can say my poetry is amazing because it's not me, but they're really useful to me. Like, so useful. Like, afterwards I read it and I go, wow, you know. So I feel like they're transmissions from another realm or from our souls that have medicine for us on the way out. And as they come through us and onto the page, then they're also medicine for others, and that they find. That's right. They find. That's right. Yep. And there's a story there. Right. There's a story there because I wrote a poem for. I've had two primary loves in my life that have been women. They both were called Lucy, and one was my childhood friend who I grew up with. And when my parents separated, I was taken away from her. And then my second one, I lost to cancer 2 years ago. And I wrote this poem, this poem wrote itself for the Lucy that died. And I actually thought at the time when I was writing it, I don't know whether I'm writing this for Lucy number 1 or Lucy number 2. Right. Lucy number 1 happened to go to a women's circle in the middle of a huge moor in northern England, at which they just happened to read the poem that I had written potentially for her. And she contacted me for the first time in years and said, I've just heard this poem, you wrote it, did you write it for me? And I was just like, oh my God, that poem literally went and found her. That's right. Went and found her. Anyway, let's stand in circle.
That's interesting, Claire, because as you're saying this, I'm pulling up on my computer the last poem that I wrote that I really love. And it wrote, actually, it's one of those, like you say, the poem wrote me. Itself. Okay.
So before you read it, I'd like us to cast a spell with you. Okay. Like us literally would all come into circle, and I'd like you to imagine. So let's all hold hands for a second and take a breath. And I'd like everybody here to lean into the quality of Luisah's soul. Like listen for what it is in her that is touching you, whether it's the mountain or the river or the forest or the vulture or the land of Africa, or like whatever it is in her that's touching you. Like, let yourself be touched. Let's hold hands. Luisah, step into the center of the circle with the corpse of your poetry and your
Mm-hmm.
poem.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to, all of us to begin with, we're just going to focus on the part of Luisah that she attacked, this poetic part. You all may see it differently, but just imagine that you are loving that part of her, and you're sort of saying to it, she couldn't manage you. She just couldn't manage at the time. You were too beautiful and too raw, but there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, you're entirely sacred. You're sacred, you're potent, you're healing, you're medicine. And we want to, like, literally just blow gentle breeze of our love into that part of you. And then when you feel it, Luisah, why don't you just read us your poem, and let's hold space for a resurrection.
Ashe. Mm. Hmm. Hmm. Now, years ago, when I was teaching dance, I had a teaching weekend at the University of British Columbia. And they put my dance class in the totem pole room. And I went looking at the totem poles, and I'm dancing under this one totem pole, the title of which was Mother of the Night. And it was a totem pole of this female being who was birthing all the levels of creation. She birthed things that were under the sea. She birthed things that came out of the water and walked on land. She birthed things that walked on land, things that flew. I mean, every level of creation was coming out from between this goddess's legs. And so I was fascinated, entranced by her, right? And I left that class and went and wrote this poem. I mean, literally, Claire, I sat down, a circle opened up in front of me, and the circle moved toward me and swallowed me up. I heard myself typing, right? And then that circle opened up and it moved back, and I was sitting in my room again. I don't know where I went except into the mystery during the writing, okay? And afterwards, because I have a Virgo moon, I sent it to a friend of mine to critique. And she said, Teish, this is a direct channeling, and you only have one grammatical error in it, and I suggest that you leave it there. So this is the poem that I received.
So let's all hear it with our whole bodies, still holding hands and still breathing love, and let's watch. Let's witness Teish's articulation of this poem as her turning back towards her poetry and her blessing and kissing this part of herself that she has.
I am the mother of the night, the great dark depth, the bringer of light. All that was, that is, that ever shall be, all that could or should can only come from me. High above and far below, I am the ebb, I am the flow. The stars in the sky, the fish in the sea, every seed, every stone, every critter is me. I am the center, the beginning, the end. I am without and I am within. I am the lair, the nest, and the den. I am the earth, the water, and wind. The horned cow, the many-titted sow, the queen bee, the mother tree, the pregnant womb, the grain seed broom, the candle's wick, the matrix, and woman, you are my daughter. Praise and love to the mothers of the world. Praise and love to the sisters of the world. Praise and love to the women of the world. Praise and love to my daughters. To the women in the fields who plow and plant and turn mill wheels. To those who spin and weave at looms, who make the mats, the cloth and brooms. To those who sew the royal robes. To those who pierce the child's earlobes. To those who rub and oil and braid. To all the queens and all the maids. Praise and love to my daughters. To those who nurse babes on their breasts, who carry on without due rest, then rise up early as the dawn to mend the fence and mow the lawn. To those who mix and stir the pot, to those who bake and clean and mop, to those who have and who have not, praise and love to my daughters. Praise and love to those who seek, to those who know and those who speak, to those who smile with tender eyes, whose wisdom penetrates the lies, to those who sing and those who cry, for those who fight for right and die, to those who live to ripe old age, to great grandma, the family sage. Praise and love to my daughters. To those unborn and yet to come, we bid you on with song and hum. From other worlds and through birth water, come forth, child, beloved daughter. Praise and love to the mothers of the world. Praise and love to the sisters of the world. Praise and love to the women of the world. Praise in love to my daughters. Original praise poem for the goddess Yemonja. From her, through me, to you.
So let's just feel that. Let's all of us feel that. Let's feel that absolute benediction and recognition of the sacredness of all woman. And Teish, how do you feel about the part of yourself that is poetry?
Well, in this moment, I'm feeling very good about her. I'd forgotten how intense that poem is for me. To be quite frank with you, this is, you know, I don't read that poem that often. Like maybe I pull it, I wrote it in the 90s, and I pull it out ever so often, every few years, and take a look at it. And this is the first time that I've read it without crying. It's the first time I've read it without crying, you know. Usually by the time I get to the third stanza, I'm choking and going on. But today, and you know, I could feel the energy of people's hands holding me, you know, and maybe that's why I didn't cry.
You know why else, I wonder? Because we're not in the world of the 90s anymore.
Right.
We're in a world in which woman is honoring her own authority increasingly in a way that is not looking outside for validation. That's my experience inside of TreeSisters. It's my experience inside of myself as well. But, you know, when we met and at the end of all of you incredible women speaking to the audience, I got up and said, like, there's the words that have come out of their mouths, but can you feel the transmission of the mother coming through them? Like, can you lean into the texture of the energy that is just so completely exceptional and vibrant and powerful that's just come through? Like when you were speaking that poem, and it's beautiful. It was beautifully presencing me to all the unseen, unappreciated, unacknowledged, taken for granted, completely taken for granted, essential roles that women do because we can, because we couldn't not do it when it's needed,
Right.
because the tendency towards caretaking and loving and serving and bringing into harmony and bringing into balance and is so intrinsic to our beingnesses. And through that vibration of your words, there was that like frequency of what I call the sacredness of oh my God, it's just so beautiful. I don't have the words for it, but it's like a shimmering, it's like the shimmering on of a setting sun light on water, that like that particular quality of gold and that particular quality of luminescence that belongs as much to a queen as to a maid, to a shepherd, frankly to a prostitute, you know, that there is no woman more sacred or less sacred than any other, because the goddess is there, you know,
Right.
and she is sacred. And so I honor the poetess in you, Teish, and I honor the priestess in you, and I honor the shamana in you, and I honor the queen in you, and I honor the maid in you. Like she's there, all of them are there, and they're all there in all of us. And the other thing that really struck me while I was listening to you was the space opened up, something else came through, and then it closed again. Like you were used by life in that moment. And I have the same language as you, like, you know, hand it over to the mystery. What, you know, what is the mystery wanting of me? And one of my friends told me that her 17-year-old son had been contemplating suicide. And basically was saying, what's the point? There's no future for us here. You know, it's over on this planet. And he basically said to her, look, I'm going to commit suicide unless you can give me one good reason why I should stay. And she said afterwards to me, she had no idea where it came from, but out of her mouth came, women are going to learn how to do magic again.
It's 12 hours.
And apparently he went, oh, of course. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can, you know, I can live with that. I can see that.
Okay.
And there's this other, and he stayed, and there's this Tibetan Buddhist myth that I'm always quoting at people, which is when 1,000 goddesses gather, the divine feminine will rebirth through their combined energies, and the frequency of the planet will shift from one of fear to one of love. And when I first heard that, I heard that around the same time as I was starting TreeSisters, and it like landed like a lightning bolt for me, because what I heard was, when enough women know how to get out of their own way, get out of their heads, stop identifying with who they think they are, come together as priestesses, open their combined energies to something greater. Something greater can come through and inform all of us. And the faster we as women can realize that we're not what we've been taught, we're not what we've been conditioned with, how the world expects us to be is not it. This is a crazy world. This world is based on the death of nature. It's based on the suppression of women. You know, like this is you know, we're living a bizarre life for whatever reason. And you know, many indigenous peoples are saying now, we have within this one lifetime the opportunity to see the flip from patriarchy into balance between the two sexes, and the you know, the shifting into reciprocity with the natural world. And it's in our hands, and that the women are the key. They're the key and the keyhole and the hand that's turning it. Like, it's got to come through
the women.
But it's not just us. It's life coming through us.
That's right.
It's what we can allow to come through our bodies, that our bodies are born for. They're You know, we're born to be transmitter, receivers, and birthers of a new reality.
That's right. That you know, that's interesting because it is totally consistent with, like, I think I told you before we started that in the face of this pandemic, you know, we have done priests and priestesses in my tradition have performed divination to find out what this is and how we should conduct ourselves and what kind of rituals we should do. And what keeps coming through is that the mothers, the women, especially the mature women, must be in the forefront of what's going on because Mother Earth is talking through us.
Yeah.
Mother Earth is talking through us, and we have to, we really need to hear her and make the changes that she is requesting of us to make and guiding us to make, you know. It's very, very difficult for a lot of people right now because a lot of people have difficulty remaining in the mystery. You know, we're in a place now where we can't just sit down and calculate what this outcome is going to be. We're in a place where we sort of have to roll with it. We have to breathe with it. It's like being in labor, you know, where you got to breathe and push and see how far you get, and then cry and breathe and push and see how far you get. And that's scary. That's scary for a lot of people. But that's the only way that we're going to birth something new, which we absolutely have to do now. I think that the survival of the human species depends on us being able to spend some time in the mystery and then dance with the changes that Mother Earth is impelling us, actually insisting that we make. There's some changes.
Yeah, she's forcing us, really. She's and it's humbling to think that something that, what do they say, like a 8 millionths of a centimeter wide or something is like bringing down the whole system.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like she can say, look, with one flick of my finger, I can have all of you in cages and elephants walking down the street.
That's right.
You know, which is what's going on. And nature gets to look at us in our cages, and you got to think she's got a sense of humor and quite a sense of irony. And
yeah,
and you know, it's not a laughing matter for those that are critically ill, for those that have already died, for those that are hanging on to loved ones that they can't see. You know, this is I almost lost a friend a couple of weeks ago. You know, I've multiple friends that are incredibly ill. It's not funny. And at the same time, we are in a reality where nature has taken control. And so I want to share a secret with you all, which is that when Teish and I met, she was in a buggy buggering around because she had issues with her spine. I was ill again. And we were sat on I was sat on the curb of the road. Do you remember, outside the Schmedy Center? And we were, and you were saying, well, I'm about to go here and go there, and I'm like, I can't fly anymore. Like, how are you even doing it? Like, where are you getting the energy from? And you were saying, I haven't got the energy, I can't do it. And I was saying, we've got to do something about this feminine disposition or predisposition towards burnout and overgiving. And so then, unbeknownst to both of us, we ended up both having a sabbatical at the same time for health reasons.
Yeah.
So you went in and had surgery. My body basically conked out. And then no sooner do you and I both stop than COVID happens and the world stops with us. Like, I was just like, I'm going to go off and have a covert rest and just like hope that I'm better in a couple of months and then be able to come back. But then all of a sudden, the whole world has stopped. And it's like, wow, what a thing. And then in this gap, in this, like, I'm going to call it a sacred gap that we're in, where normal has been suspended, whatever normal is. Normal has been suspended. So all the ways of thinking, ways of being, normalcy, hamster wheel, economy stuff that we just do as normal has been suspended. It's like having a huge Band-Aid ripped off.
Yes.
And up comes everything that our normal way of being keeps suppressed through normalcy. And who are we? Who are we? You know, who are we in the gap? Who are we in the absence of business as normal? Who are we in our isolation and our aloneness, in our lack of touch, in our inability to get away from the people in our household that we struggle with, or our inability to, you know, A, B, and C, the coping mechanisms that we usually have that are taken away from us? Who are we in the circumstances that have been forced upon us, which if life had decided that this was the perfect medicine for us, the perfect medicine for us to witness something about ourselves, understand more about ourselves, face more in ourselves, come to terms with more in ourselves. You know, I've found, like, generally speaking, if I have a wobbly patch, there's a few of my shadows that arise and I go, oh, it's you again. And then we go into the fray and, you know,
hello.
Hi. This time it's felt like they've all come onto the stage together, the whole lot in one go. She's like, oh my God, you know, can I manage this? Am I going to go stuck staring bonkers? Another part of me going, I must be strong enough. You know, we must collectively be strong enough for this. We must be collectively strong enough to be able to have the kind of shifts that will bring about the changes that will birth a new possibility, or it wouldn't be happening now. Like, we're the ones that are going through this because we have the seeds inside us of something else. I really, really believe that. So I would love it if we get to have a little sharing of your storyteller side. We've had your poetic side. You were telling me before we got on that there was a piece that you had written.
Yes.
That was your eco myth of Earth speaking to us. And I think it would be amazing if we could all adopt a thoroughly receptive position and receive another of your blessings. And how would you like us to listen? Like what side of ourselves would you like to listen?
You know, as a storyteller, I would often walk out on stage and ask people to do a couple of things. The first one is to open your third eye and see the performance happening in your conscious vision. You know, it's like children have no problem going along with the storyteller. You know, they see what you say, they feel the characters that you put forth. And so I always say to people that I tell stories for children from 3 to 93. You know, so your analytical mind will not serve you while I am reading this piece, okay? The child self who can go along with the story needs to come to the forefront and really feel yourself both as, it's called Earth's Children, we need to feel ourselves both as the main character who is speaking and as her children that she's speaking to, you know. So it's a total identity with every with every aspect of the story. And also know that I was asked by the Shift Network to join a group of wisdom keepers who were responding to this virus, right? And I know that, you know, most people are concerned about the litany of do's and don'ts and how are we going to manage this. So I wanted to take a different approach to it. So I went into meditation and I asked the question that I always ask in things like that is, what is it that I know, have, or can do that will be a really relevant contribution to the goal, you know, of what's going on. And when I went inside, you know, for the past, I would say since 1998, I have been saying to people that we are living in a war zone with an epidemic during a natural disaster. Those three things have been going on and going on and going on. And I've always said to people that, you know, what you want to do is be a tower of light standing in the rubble, waiting for, you know, that things are going to crash, things are going to fall apart, because living in a war zone with an epidemic during a natural disaster is not sustainable. That has to fall, okay? So if you can see yourself as a tower of light standing in the rubble, who is strengthening yourself and prepared to be among those who rebuild, or who is going to create the new, that's what I've been asking people to do. And so when they asked me to make my commentary on COVID-19, this is the story. This is the story that came out. So I want you, as I'm reading this, I invite everybody to see themselves both as Mother Earth and also as her children at the same time. All right, kids, she said, pinching her third eye. They were fussing and calling each other ugly names. Stop it. She'd enjoyed a great sense of accomplishment in birthing such a beautiful variety of beings. It took several million years for them to learn that they all came from her, our mother. But now some of these kids imagine themselves superior to her other children because of silly things such as skin color, hair texture, and the space between their legs. Try to behave now. The boys fought in hand-to-hand combat, sometimes using clubs, knives, and bows and arrows. They built walls to separate themselves from each other, but just as quickly, they knocked those walls down with elephants, invaded each other's spaces on horseback, and stole away with the booty of war, spices, gold, and women trapped between the humps on a camel's back. Boys, you need to settle down out there. Oh, Mom, we're just playing a war game. She bit her lips and shook her head as flecks of copper fell from the curls in her nappy hair. I can't let boys drive me crazy. Those boys love to fight over their imaginary friend. Their battle cry rang in her ear. My God's bigger than your God. My God's bigger than yours. Can't y'all find something better to do? Warzone is a tired old game. She told them to play nice now. So they harnessed the light of the sun and grew crops for barter and sale. They began to build roads, to create machines that flew through the air and roamed the seas. At first, she was pleased that they had learned to make these toys, but they felled the trees in the ancient forest and hunted her beautiful animals almost to extinction. Soon their playthings produced a gray cloud of poison that filled the sky. The creatures in the ocean, trapped in nets and plastic, cried out in pain. She too cried out as they pierced her body and drained the black blood from her veins. Oh, mama, climate change ain't nothing. Who needs them icebergs anyway? She doubled over from the pain in her belly and screamed, "Shut up, boy!" She stomped her feet, and that command set an earthquake in motion. A volcano erupted, and a tsunami followed. I'm gonna ask y'all one more time to put down those weapons and stop fussing. Only a few of them obeyed her request. She pondered the question, what will it take to make them change? At that moment, a crack in the calabash of the world ran around the equator. She opened her mouth as a bit of matter rolled down her tongue and fell at her feet. She picked the curious thing up and examined it closely. The inscription read, "Crown of Change." She placed the crown upon her head, and a surge of power moved through her. Now hear this. I am your mother, your queen, and your salvation. Go to your room, she commanded in a booming voice. The children were taken aback by the thunder in her voice. Get in there and clean up the mess you've made. Put away those weapons of mass destruction. Take out the trash, the fear, the hatred, and the greed. Cover your faces and wash your hands. Go into the silence, the stillness within. There you will find your birthright, your humanity, and my love. Do your homework, children. Practice humility and respect. She turned away from them with the crown half cocked on her head. The children stared at her back, afraid of what she would do next. She looked over her shoulder and lightning flashed in her eyes. Don't make me repeat myself. A chorus of voices answered in many languages. Yes, ma'am. Note, it was by obedience to this command that the children were saved.
You know what? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the writing and sharing.
I'm laughing because, you know, when I've read this piece to some people and they've said, girl, she acting just like my mama. If y'all can't play nice, go to your room. That's what's happened here. We've been sent to our room. We've been sent to our room, you know, and we just have to, take a look at the behaviors that have, you know, caused her to send us there. We really have to.
And the, you know, it's weird. I've not really bottomed it out yet. The mother wound and the father wound. Mm-hmm. You know, the mother wound in our world that allows us to trash our mother and believe that mm-hmm. that's somehow normal. The father wound that keeps electing caricatures of men mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. into positions of power. And along with that, the childlike need for the strong man who will just mm-hmm. say the words that we want to hear, even if they're just out and out lies, you know, just basically saying, just take responsibility for me because I can't do it myself.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
This sort of abdication of our sacred masculine and dominance mm-hmm. of our sacred feminine. And the words that really most landed when you just read that were, don't make me repeat myself.
Don't make me repeat myself.
Because she can hold us in lockdown for as long as she wants. And there is, you know, and I just read an article, well, I read something on my phone this morning that said the UK's just been told that there could be 6 more waves of this, you know.
What? Wait, slow down. Say that again.
I just saw something on my phone this morning that said the UK are being warned that there could be six more waves of this. And I have no idea where that came from. But I mean, the reality is we've got a virus. We've got a virus on the loose. And a virus is going to do what it wants, how it wants. And if that virus, you know, in my way of seeing, that virus is as much encoded with the intelligence of Gaia and the cosmos as we are, because it's here and it's made of her, as we're all made of her. So every one of us is wired into the mainframe of cosmic and Gaian intelligence. If we'll open to it, well, so's a flipping virus. You know, it's like, don't make me repeat myself. I hear, if this doesn't work, I'll do it again.
I'll do it again until you get it.
And don't think that having an economy that requires the death of ecology is normal, sane, kind, reverent, reciprocal, or sustainable. And we don't want to look at the demolition of the known because we don't like change. But we don't have a future, and neither do most of the species on the planet if we continue to have an economy that requires the death of nature, and therefore the system has to come down.
It has to. Yeah, it has to.
And we have to rethink, and the future has to become an expression of a depth of connection and reverence for self, other, and nature that could not sell our children up the Swanee with no paddle,
right?
Because we haven't got the creativity or the generosity to ensure that they've got a future. Like, this is such a this is a really uncomfortable, really confronting, really inherently beautiful moment, whereby, you know, the love that we really are and the nature that we really are has an opportunity to bring its consciousness through if we can stop for long enough to hear it, to listen to it, to feel it, to allow it. And then because I think if we can allow ourselves to be done by this, like just say, do me, like do me properly, so that the grieving and the letting go and the preparedness to sit in the unknown, in the unknown and feel as unsafe as that makes you feel. A hawk just flew straight past my window as I said that. Then
that's a good omen.
That's a good omen. Then the preparedness to feel that without having the escape pod or the way planned or the knowing how we're going to get out of this will alchemize us enough to change our shape so that we literally cannot go back to the way things were. We can't go back. The train has left the station. It's not going back to that platform again. We are en masse traveling into a different version of ourselves. Well, if we're doing that, can we stop resisting it and can we start embracing it?
You know, the good news that you're speaking to is there's been an argument for the longest time that the human being and the human condition requires good and evil, requires creation and destruction, you know, this thing that folks get stuck in. But there's a recently I came upon, I can't remember his name right now, an evolutionary biologist. I think he wrote a book called Belonging. And his position is that we have been taught that adversarial behavior is what is normal to humans and to be expected of humans. But he said, if we look at the long picture of it, mutual belonging is why we have continued to exist as a species. And his whole thing is if we stop teaching that warfare is history, and we start teaching that living humbly in community is the real goal, that it will change us on a genetic and cellular level. I'm so
believe
ready
that.
for that. Woo! You
I
know,
think it's
what is this?
happening.
How do we get rid of, how do we heal ourselves from human cruelty? Can we just stop being cruel? That's what I want. If we can stop being cruel to ourselves, to each other, to the planet, just stop being cruel. That's all.
But
You
half of
ain't
us
gotta be magnificent.
half of us don't even recognize that that's what it is.
I know,
You
that's
know,
the problem.
it's like externalized, dissociated pain
Yeah.
that so many people have not had any support in their lives to understand how to deal with intolerable pain.
Right. You got it. That's true. That's
And
very, that's
injustice.
very real.
You know, the injustice.
Very real.
You know,
Mm.
you know, I find it really personally interesting for me that I ended up in America, because I have really strong, what feels like karmic relationships to slavery, and really strong karmic relationships to the genocide with the First Nations people, and also really strong links with the gold rush. All three things I find agonizing to the point of like tear my skin off. I can't bear it.
Yeah.
And here I am, and I've moved into the center of the gold rush, where there was a genocide. You know, there was a genocide. There was like, I live on land the First Nations people of this place lived on, and you know, you could be rewarded $1.20 to kill them and produce a scalp. And your people, you know, how do you recover? How do you recover from being treated that way? And you know, when I stood on the land in some of the most devastated areas that I'm a profound lover of nature. When I stood on the land and looked at where a mountain was, Malakoff diggings, where they used hydraulic work to like blast the mountain away to get the gold out. And I stood there and I was like, there is no difference between the gold rush and child abuse.
That's right.
Because you have to completely disappear the sacredness of everything in front of you. You have to lose the fact that this is immoral, unsacred. You have to lose the land, the trees, the child, the black person. You know, you have to, and you only see what you want that gives you the whatever the gold is for you, whether it's some seriously sick erotic experience of abuse, whether it's total power over and the need to be cruel and own another person. It's unthinkable to me, like unthinkable. Or to see the peoples of this land as just vermin to get rid of, because and yet all of that has been an expression of consciousness as it has arisen through humanity, and it has left enormous scars, splits, fractures in the psyche of our collective awareness, in which nightmares are still asking to be addressed. And so I don't know how we get rid of cruelty until we can sit in the gaps and consciously alchemize the nightmares that have not been addressed because the pain was too great and the injustice too severe. And you're left with this just deep, demoralized, turned inside out self-hatred that is actually a complete lie, because you've been treated like shit, and so you feel like shit and you believe that you're shit, and then you instinctively know that that's not true, but you have no access to the sense of your sacredness because you're stuck behind this wall of a lie of your inadequacy or your whatever. Oh my God. So, and yet I think all of that stuff, the stuff that's in the way of each of us knowing that we're sacred, is sitting in this gap, the COVID gap. Like who has not got crap rising to the surface? Who is not having to address the fears and the inadequacies and the You know, I got so angry last week I could feel violence in me, and I'm just like, oh my God, you know, I've got as much capacity to be violent as the next person. It's just, have I got enough self-awareness to be present to the feelings that are rising through me?
Yeah. You know, we have to develop some ritual practices to purge that internal illness that you're describing. I think one of the problems with this culture, especially American culture, that it's been thought that all you have to do is intellectualize about these things, you know, quantify something and that kind of stuff. But people need ritual. People need ways to dissipate, clean, transform energy. And, you know, we no longer have earth-based rites of passage.
Yeah.
We no longer have those rituals that that acclimated us to our relationship to nature and taught us how to do that kind of healing. I used to, when I was at the Center for, not the Center for Sacred Studies, the Institute in Culture and Creation Spirituality, the University of Spirituality in Oakland. I used to talk to my students about what places in nature you go to heal certain things. You know, it's like somebody who's having a bout with depression needs to go sit at the ocean and just sit there, you know, and allow the waves to wash over you, because at the ocean, you're returning to the primordial womb. It's a time when you can remake yourself, you know. And I had a practice that I used to do with people where I would have people walk into the ocean and devolve to a single cell, right? And go there on the ocean floor. They would find Yemayao Lokun, the big goddess, the big mother, and suckle on her breasts and then re-evolve themselves different, cleaned, etc. You know, I did a lot of stuff with that kind of imagery. And it's very interesting because on the 40th anniversary of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, I was in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's when I stopped doing that practice with people who were landlocked, because I got a couple of folks who devolved into sea creatures and would not revolve to human.
Wow.
They stayed there, you know. And one woman almost had a nervous breakdown. I had to really pull her back to being human. Another time I took people into the deep waters and asked them each to become, you know, some element or some creature down there. And this one woman said, oh, I think I failed this exercise. I said, there's no such thing as failing it. I mean, I'm just trying to have you have an experience of nature. She said, I think I failed this exercise because other people were becoming whales and seahorses and stuff, and not me. I said, well, what did you become when you went into the water? You know what she said? Plankton. I said, baby girl, please, okay? Do you know the value of plankton? Do you have any idea how many of the creatures of the sea live on plankton, you know? And I was so glad that she spoke up, because she was a woman, low-income woman with several children, and she had been taught that she was not valuable. So she only saw herself as plankton.
Which is the most valuable thing.
the most valuable thing in the ocean, you know. So that transformed her attitude toward herself, you see. And we need your thing about gods and goddesses get together, right? If we could get 1,000 people at one time to have an experience that transforms their consciousness on a cellular level, it could send a ripple of change through through this whole thing. It really could. It really could. At the same time that I'm saying that, what I have to confront is me as a storyteller, as a performer, as a ritualist. Right now, the only way I can do that, any of that, is the way that we're doing it right now, on Zoom or online.
Which is better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
And actually, I do the majority of things online, and people are always staggered by how powerful it can be. Because at the level of energy, there is no time and distance. Like when we come into circle virtually, it is so powerful. It's so powerful. And more so because we can have people all around the world. Like we can create a grid all around the world. So I'm going to publicly put you on the spot. You ready?
Yeah.
You're allowed to say no, by the way, but I might as well just ask you while you're in a pressurized container. I would love it if we could do some more work with you around teaching people about ritual, about sharing about ritual, teaching people about ritual, possibly doing some rituals together, because I think it's one of the huge losses in Western culture that we've lost. We've lost ritual, we've lost initiation. I think there's a starving for something that we don't even know that we've lost. And how would you feel about potentially doing some work with the TreeSisters Network to actually share more of your wisdom?
Well, let me say two things. I definitely love the work that TreeSisters is doing. Definitely love that. I'm on a pause right now, but I do teach online classes, and one of them is the elements of ritual.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, you know, we should talk about that further, because I would love to do, you know, I've taught what's called eco-mythology, similar to the thing that I just read. And when we can get back out into nature, that spiritual healing that I was talking about, there's rituals for that. That's that book that Leilani and I did, On Holy Ground, you know, has rituals in it to acclimate people to the sacredness of nature, and to help us overcome what we call our miseducation. We've been miseducated into what we call conquistador consciousness. You know, we have to heal from that. To heal from that. So that's a real possibility. What I have to do is take a look at the classes that I'm already scheduling, the engagements like the Flourishing Diversity Delegation, the writing that I'm working on, and, you know, the body care, the post-surgery body care.
Oh yeah, this is not a pressure thing. And our, you know,
talk about it.
Our vow to each other, Teish, is we only do it if it's fun, if it's non-pressurizing, and if it gives us energy. And I'm going to say that out to everybody that's listening. Like, one of the things that has to happen for me, and I'll project this onto everybody merrily, is a deeper listening to the rhythm of life that is asking to be lived, rather than the crazy ass urgency that we've been conditioned with. And so the great ideas come, and my impetuousness is always like, oh, let's do this, and somehow I have to grow the muscle of going, okay, write that down, that's a great idea, now let's just sit and feel for where that fits, if it's time, and to trust the deeper knowing of our bodies rather than what our minds are telling us. Our minds are just going to regurgitate more of the same. Our bodies are made of this creation and are woven into an intelligence that knows the timing of things. Like, there's something bizarre about that had you and me both go on sabbatical right at the point that the planet did.
Right at that point.
Like, there's just some sort of a mystery that you just have to surrender to. So I'm just really aware that we're over time here. We need to complete. And I want to ask you if you could seed a blessing or a permission or a message from your deep volcanic juicy yumminess into the hearts of everybody that's listening.
Okay, hold on just a minute. What comes up is we are the seeds of change. And what I'm seeing, and this is probably because I've been working in the garden the last few days, what I'm seeing is a seed that has like an outer hull on it, like a sunflower seed or a pumpkin seed or something that is encased. And inside of that is the potential to grow something new, to grow something that is going to heal our concerns, to produce something beautiful. And so we want to drop this seed of our own consciousness into some soil that has compost mixed in it. And the compost is made from the rot of the old culture that has decayed and transformed into compost. Okay, so mix that with the soil of the earth, and we're going to put our seed self in this mixture and put a little water on it, which that water is the tears of our times. We have to allow ourselves to feel what's going on here, because if the rain don't fall, the corn don't grow. And allow yourself to feel that, and then allow the rays of the sun to turn those wet tears into warm water that sinks down and caresses the seed. And it soaks the edges of the seed, and that case bursts open. That case bursts open, and growth starts to happen. And we see those initial first leaves penetrating the surface of that earth. And from that comes a main stalk. And from that main stalk, little arms go out and more leaves go out. And we go up that stalk and more arms go out and more leaves go out. And as we continue to go up, something flowers. Let's take a minute and really nurture that which is about to flower in us. Tell it that we already recognize that it is good because of the source, the seed that it came from. Tell it that we commit to nurturing it to fullness. Tell it that we know that it is going to be both beautiful and delicious, and allow it to flower even as it flowers, holding its face up to the sun. Also see the roots underground spreading out in every direction, connecting with the roots of the others on the left and on the right, which connect to the roots, 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 until these trees, these plants crown the planet, surround the planet, and connect us all to each other and to this planet forever. Let it be Ashe, Ashe, Ashesheo.
May it be so.
Ashe.
There was a story that I wish that you'd been able to say today, but I'm just going to assume that at some point we're going to be able to do this again.
Okay.
And it was the story, your story from your childhood around the trees where you lived, and those trees being taken down. And so let's hold that for another time. But I know how passionate you are about the trees. I know how deeply environmentally minded you are. And there's a lot of that. Oh, good. We've just got so much more to talk about. So we're just we're going to do this again. But
we'll definitely do this again.
Meanwhile, for those of you that have never heard of TreeSisters, I just want to let you know that TreeSisters is a love affair on behalf of the sacred feminine and on behalf of the trees of our world. But when you're talking about the trees of our world, you're talking about the rivers and the oceans and the rain and the sea beings and all the different species. It's like, you can't talk about trees without talking about every other interconnected part of the natural world. And so we are focused on reforestation and ecosystem restoration forests because we cannot live without them. And it is so much more than that. It is the restoration of ourselves, our relationship with nature, our relationship with reciprocity, with reverence, with sacredness, and the sacredness of woman. So may I invite all of you to become TreeSisters. And that also means that each of us, as a default in our lives, gives something every month that we can turn into trees. That means you become a restorer, whatever you can give, just an amount of money. I know that that's difficult right now, and yet we still need to take care of our mother.
That's right.
And you can do that at treesisters.org/join or treesisters.org/donate. And also know that there is a whole global community of women here waiting for you. If you are alone or if you're feeling in isolation right now, we have online communities where women are talking about this and figuring out how to bring their gifts and figuring out what their creativity looks like at this time. And you are welcome, every single one of you. You'll find that on the TreeSisters website, treesisters.org. Please come, please join us, please plant some trees with us, and sign up to our newsletter, because then when we've got Luisah coming back on again, you will know about it. And meanwhile, I would love it if you could share this with as many people as you know. Share it on social media so that Luisah's voice gets out even further, so that the magic that she is gets out even further, and the invitation of her poetry and her prose can land in more soil of human souls and do its work. So thank you, all of you, for taking your time with us. Luisah, thank you, bless you. Get onto your next Zoom call.
Okay.
And keep convalescing.
Yes, and write some more poems.
Okay. I'll be waiting for yours.
Okay, baby. All right. Love you muchly, Claire.
I love you too. Take care.
Bye-bye. Wonderful.